Hi, everybody. This is Erica Mello, and welcome to episode number 188 of Tough to Treat. And if you're listening to this live when the episode drops, Susan and I want to wish you a very happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays going forward. This is an episode that was recorded in 2021, and it was about the foot. And this will be a re-release of this very popular episode. We haven't done an episode on the foot in a while, and we both thought it would be a great idea to bring it back to the forefront because the foot is a very common driver for much dysfunction in the body. You've often heard us talk about how the foot and the thorax are very much related, the foot and the pelvis are very much related. To ignore the foot, especially when somebody has a chronic injury or has had a foot injury in their history, is to not be thorough, right? So you really want to think about when you're looking at your patients and they have a foot injury in their history, or if they're just complaining about foot pain like this person was, think about why, okay? Think about where their center of mass is, how their body is responding to gravity. And then if you find that the foot is the driver, then you do a deep dive into the assessment. So we hope you enjoy the episode, and we look forward to hearing from you. If you have any questions or want to be a guest on the episode, please do not hesitate to email us. It is toughtotreatpt@gmail.com. And Susan and I would love for you also, for any new listeners or any old listeners who haven't left us a review on wherever you listen to us. We would really appreciate it if you did, if you wrote a small testimony, very short. We would, if you have found value with this, and we truly appreciate it. It helps us with the algorithm, and it helps people find us. And we're very passionate about getting this information out. Thank you again, and enjoy the episode. Hi, everybody. Welcome to podcast number 97. This is Erica Mello and Susan Clinton. How are you, Susan?
I'm good, Erica.
All right, so let's just get right to it. This is a patient who is she just turned 50. And in January of 2021, she fell. She's fallen a few times. It's amazing when people, when they say they fell, they literally forget how they fall. They just, I fell, I don't remember. It was in a cam walker, okay, for 6 weeks. She basically fractured her fibula. They x-rayed her, fractured her fibula. This was not like your basic ankle sprain. This was a fractured fibula. So she was in the cam walker for 6 weeks. They put her in a stirrup brace for 2 weeks. And then she was really clear. This is in January. So you figure that's 8 weeks. That puts her into mid-March. She had to leave the country for something and didn't come back, okay, at all until recently. And of note, she had a PRP injection in that same ankle in February. So about 5 weeks post-fall, she had the PRP injection. Not sure why she had that. It didn't really help that much, but they did it nonetheless. So I just started seeing her recently, and mid-April was when I was the first. I've seen her only a couple times. So the mid-April was the evaluation, and
Did she have bone healing problems?
No, I asked her that.
Yeah,
no,
I'm just wondering about PRP as well.
Exactly. So I asked her I said, have you any bone mineral density? Had you heal well? She's like, no, I'm pretty good. She's big into supplements and the whole thing, very holistic. But no, I'm looking at no, she did not, which I thought was interesting. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why. She have no bone stimulator, nothing.
Okay.
So she ended up going for therapy somewhere. And I'm not sure how much. I think she just went for one visit, and they gave her inversion, band exercise. So a couple of visits, inversion, eversion, plantar flexion dorsal, went to the band. I don't know how much hands-on they did, but it made her worse. Just inversion, eversion made her worse in supine. Mm-hmm. So she is a big fan of the MELT method and has done a lot of work with foam rolling. And I know I'm not doing the method justice, but she was really bought into that. And it has helped her over the years with many things. And so she did this particular program for the foot, and it said it helped her more than actually going to therapy. And I'm like, well, we can't have that. That's not good for our profession. I mean, and I love the person who does the melt. I think they're fantastic, and she's from New York, and so I know her. But I was just like, ooh, inversion, eversion with the band, and that's not good. And why is that? Why are you sore from that? And we need to sort of, thank you for giving, us our profession another chance and not just doing it on your own. So that was what she came in to see me with. I'll give you her past medical history. It was primarily stiffness. I mean, obvious, right? I mean, she'd been booted. She had the fracture in January. 3 months later, she comes in for this 12 weeks.
Wow.
12 weeks of nothingness. So, for various reasons, but she just, of course she's going to feel stiff. In terms of medications, no, she's on progesterone, 200 milligrams.
Okay.
She's on a V-Val patch, 0.025 twice a week. Zinc and vitamin C and omegas and the whole, she's very into that. Magnesium. Prior history of horseback riding. She ended up, I'm just looking at my notes here, but when she was 18 years old, she did a lot of cross-country running as a hurdler. She's fallen off the horse a couple times, fell onto her left side a couple years ago off a bike incident. No history of concussion, no major, other falls, but she's had falls off the horse and off the bike. And then she started, her big exercise is rowing. She likes to row. Okay, just like an ergo rower, 3 times a week for 20 minutes is pretty much what she does. Besides that, no other significant medical history, she's sprained both of her ankles. She does a lot of essential oils. So she applied like chamomile, eucalyptus, frankincense on the ankle throughout that whole time. So that's what I got. I mean, I asked her all the relevant questions because I was thinking, you're in perimenopause at this point, right? No incontinence, no major other issues. She said 3 children. One is like in her 20s now. The rest are sort of out of the house. No sort of digestive issues. She sees a naturopath, like very sort of on point with things, but did not go for, was not referred for, did not go for physical therapy. This is her first major injury, besides the falls off the bike, which she never sought help for because she healed on her own, and as well as the stuff when she was younger. So that's what I got subjectively, and I got like, I don't know why I was worse after the bands. I was like, well, I don't know why you were worse after the bands either. I mean, you may have been doing it a little aggressively. I don't know. It's hard to say. I didn't have an excuse for her there. So I didn't want to like beat the dead horse. And I don't like to say, well, people just, I say it's nice that you moved on. It's like when we have a hairdresser, we don't like a hairdresser, we move on, we go with somebody else. So it's, I don't like to disparage other people. So I said, everybody's different and the business models are different. And that's the way it goes. And no health insurance either. Okay. Which is a big issue, I think. So, so what I did
what was her main complaints when she came in? Like
stiffness in the band, stiffness in her ankle, and that she was sore after doing the theraband exercises from the other facility.
Okay.
That was it. I watched her walk in. She was not limping. She looked fine. And
she was basically dismayed after her physical therapy experience that she got worse instead of better. In her, she perceived that she was actually worse rather than better. So she was coming from basically, there's got to be another way.
Right. She was referred to me from a friend of mine.
Okay.
From a friend. Excuse me. So, and this was her right ankle. So in standing, I'll tell you what I saw, and it was really interesting. In standing, she was way on her right leg, on her involved side. Her pelvis was to the right. Everything was just to the right. Her head was centered. I mean, she was right. Excuse me. She had significant right calf atrophy not surprisingly, um, I had her stand on one leg. It was obviously much harder. You're going to see a typical exam, right? I had her squat. She literally couldn't even go to the left. I'm like, why isn't she going to the left? She's got no dorsiflexion. She's restricted. You could see it. She had no significant issues in her. She had a lot of restrictions in her talocrural joint. And so I said, what movement bothers you most? She's like, walking, walking and squatting. I was like, okay, let me look at the squat because that's easy for me to assess, and then I'll watch you walk. So I watched her walk, and she didn't really have any of the push off with the right leg behind her, and then as she went forward, she didn't really have that knee over the toe. She didn't have that dorsiflexion. You could just see the whole ankle. I mean, it makes sense, right? But there's probably an articular restriction because of all the time she's been in the boot. But she's walking. And so I'm like, well, you're walking, you're getting movement and you're getting juice in that ankle just by walking alone. By the melt method and all of that definitely helps. It loosens things up for you. And that's why you feel better after that.
Made her move in novel ways again.
Yes.
Because she was in a boot for so long, and then you lay down on the floor and have to roll around on things and get in different positions and move around in different ways. And and she likes it. So it just kind of spoke to her.
Yes.
It added a variety of movements to her, but there's something that's not happening there that needs to be happening, it sounds like.
Right. So I basically took a look at her and I was like, well, and to make a long story short, she had a lot of significant shifts in her lower thorax. I don't know why. Probably just, she doesn't, she is home now, obviously, and so not, moving around as much. You probably have some movement pattern that shifts you to the right. She was very interested in why she was right on her right leg. I couldn't get her off her right leg. And she was really bought into the whole alignment. I don't even want to say alignment, the whole fact that she was on her right leg and that was the side that she injured. So when I made her aware of that, I put her in front of the mirror. So I think everybody should have a mirror in their room or a mirror close by. So I put her in front of the mirror. I stood behind her so she couldn't see me, or I stood to the side. And I just had her shift her weight over, and she could see that she had a really hard time getting onto her left side. So for her, I'm thinking, she's like, oh, I need to correct that. So I'm thinking in my brain, graded motor imagery. I'm like, already I'm thinking, and I haven't even done the actual foot exam yet. So I'm thinking that I'm going to actually give her the GMI protocol, which I ended up doing, but I will show you. So when I actually took a look at her foot, so I, assessed the foot in 3 different positions. So because this woman was, coming out of the boot, not like a persistent pain issue, I didn't put her through like the entire full body exam that I normally would do. I did in the sense that I had her stand, I had her squat, I saw what movements happened when she squatted. I had her take a look at a step forward. But was I doing a slump test, a straight leg? None of that stuff. No, I wasn't doing it. I had her do heel raises. She was fairly okay with that. But I didn't really go down there because for me, it was just, she had no therapy after being 7 to 8 weeks in a boot. You need to look at the foot. You need to assess the foot. You need to do it well. So besides the squat restriction, besides the push off and dorsiflexion restriction and gait, I had her in sitting. I took her in sitting and I did, however people, just for the purposes of the podcast or the listeners, however you assess the foot is fine, but I do believe that you should assess the entire foot, especially when you have somebody like this. So I assess it in sitting. I do your typical talar tilt, I'll assess the calcaneus, the talus. Obviously, she had restrictions there. Okay, I'm not going to get into the whole, description, significant restrictions there. I have her go prone on her tummy, prone, the foot off the bed. I'll assess cuboid, I'll assess navicular, I'll just go in and and I would very, very detailed. Would I do this as detailed as somebody else? Probably not. But because she had the issues with the foot and it was so obvious with the restrictions, I did. I went to cuboid, I went to navicular, I did, cuneo, I did them all. However we all learn in school. I mean, however we do it. Then I had her in the hook lying on the bed, test the big toe. I had her just I assess some, the ability for the foot. We talk about fanning, right? The ability to fan and fold. So when she was prone on her tummy, I assessed the fanning and the folding of the calcaneal cuboid joint, the talar navicular joint, and et cetera, et cetera. Then when I got her in hook lying, I did the same thing, tested the big toe, things like that. And so I gave, because I knew she was sore with the theraband, I'm like, why was she sore? I mean, she shouldn't really have been, unless she was great theraband. So I gave her foot the attention that she wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm people are like, I'm doing air quotes here, that she wanted, because she wanted that. So, and I was happy to practice my foot skills too. So, and so obviously she had a significant restriction in the talocrural joint, in the calcaneonavicular, in the talonavicular calcaneal cuboid, all just very stiff. Why? Because she was in the boot for so long, didn't get therapy, blah, blah, blah. That's not difficult. But I want to know why she's on her right leg. That was my whole thing. And I'm curious as to what you think about the menopausal stuff, because she's just on hormones now.
So how old is she?
50.
Okay. So is she still having periods or no?
No.
Okay, so she actually started into menopause a little bit early.
Early, yeah.
Mm-hmm. If she's already a full year without having a period.
Yeah. Yeah.
That means that she was really going through menopause a little bit. I mean, going through perimenopause, the estrogen storm. If she's now 50 and is done, then she was really going through her estrogen storm earlier.
Yeah.
She's probably on the if you're going to be on HRT, the time of estrogen storm and just right after is the biggest time that we're so far right now, what the literature is showing us gives us the best benefit.
Yeah.
It's interesting that this is a fracture though. It just makes me wonder, with her, one of the things that happens is HRT does not have any benefits to the tendon at all. It has benefits to muscle, it has benefits to some ligament stuff, but it doesn't have any benefits to the tendon. So I'm just wondering if part of her reaction to the band, part of her reason the melt method felt so good, was, first of all, she was booted and stirruped for a long time.
Yeah.
And so if you think about the Achilles and you think about maybe even the peroneus longus, which is what the tendon that was probably the band of muscles most affected by this fibular fracture, do the muscles get inhibited, or are they overworking? Which, if that's, I don't know, what did you find with fanning, the cuboid and navicular?
Oh, significant restrictions.
Yeah. And so you have to kind of almost think, gosh, is the peroneus longus, just in a state of overactivity?
Right.
Because remember that longus hooks up underneath the navicular in there, to help, give some foot control as we move into, heel off. So, just thinking that, perhaps those tendons could be, just, I don't like to use the word brittle, but just not as hyperactive or hyper flexible as they used to be. Plus you've got muscle that's overreacting, because of the fracture. And her Achilles is certainly, I mean, her gastrocs are certainly probably a muscle group that was overreacting, overprotected as well. And it makes sense because she was booted for so long. And you said that she had did she have difficulty with like doing heel raises, like, being on her toes and raising up and down onto her heels? I mean, raising her heels up and down off the ground.
Single leg, yes.
Yeah. So part of that is like, muscle that hasn't been activated, and part of it is learned behavior, because you've learned how to behave in a boot. You get out of the boot, and if your tendons are somewhat stiff, then you're going to, continue moving that way. So in that, thinking around, like, maybe it isn't a bone health issue, but much more of a just a, the after effects being much more of a little bit of a tendon issue.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, when they exercised her with the band, if that's the case, if we've got a case of muscles that are already a bit overactive, just in that guarding kind of stress response situation, and we have tendons that aren't as flexible as they maybe were 5 or 7 years ago.
Right.
And especially because of the boot. So we kind of have like a perfect little storm going on here. When you start firing up when you take the leg and you put it into, these activities such as inversion, eversion, you have to remember that when she goes into inversion and then she's pulling, to go into eversion, so the band's around the outside of the foot, and she's in inversion and she's trying to push into eversion, that you're taking a muscle that's kind of probably not in the best link tension relationship because of the neural activity,
Mhm.
and you have a tendon that's a bit stiff. And so what you're ending up doing is as the muscle starts to activate, it actually almost starts to eccentrically
Mhm.
lengthen rather than concentrically tighten to pull
Yes.
the
Yeah.
tendon, because the tendon's not giving. So
Right.
you get, and so that could have been one of the things that made her super sore and
Yeah.
made it a bit painful, because if you think about it, when did muscles get damaged? In eccentric activity.
Right. Right. Right.
And so that may have been, one of the, if we're going to talk about a supposition about, physiology, that may have been a physiological kind of response,
Mhm.
to kind of this, this thing. And so what you were doing was very interesting, is that you were doing much more of kind of like, we're assessing, but we all know that if we put our hands on somebody, there's a response to touch. And
Oh,
when we move joints back and forth, we're dealing with mechanoreceptors. And so there probably was some kind of feedback loop to the muscles to like, hey, you guys don't have to work so hard anymore, because the joints are, you're kind of wiggling the joints, and we get a mechanoreceptor effect,
right.
into the system, so that, and of course, then the brain can like start kind of processing that information. But yeah, I would also be thinking about some graded motor imagery too, just to
Mhm.
help her kind of, restore the whole kind of brain train piece around that, because she doesn't have to have persistent pain to have her leg taken kind of out of the equation in her
Yeah.
brain, because it was kind of like, oh, it's booted. So the sensory thing around that, we have, well, I don't think anybody's really done. We know about mirror neurons, and we know about space neurons, the space that your foot is occupying, or, you know, but we, I don't, so we have to kind of almost think, gosh, did that boot become an invasion into her mirror neurons or her space neurons? And that changed, some of the movement strategies, movement patterns, are kind of like put a little bit more of a protective thing in there, like it could, of course.
Yeah. And I think she was on her right leg because she was booted for so long, and it just
Yeah,
became part of her brain schema. Like she didn't
yeah,
offload it because she's like, oh, I can, and that's the only thing I could
yeah.
think of, because there's no other reason for her to be still
Well,
solid.
it's always interesting to me when I have people who have had an obvious injury on one side or another, and I like to take them to, we go to the wall and put fingertips on the wall with the
Yeah.
elbows straight, and that takes the rotation out of the body. And immediately then I have them like stand on one leg,
Mhm.
and every single time they either do one of two things. They either overshift completely way off,
Yeah.
to the uninvolved side, like way, like really over there, or they can't shift over there at all.
Yeah.
But they can't load the other leg as well, so they can never lift so it would be, I was wondering how she did, would she be able to lift that left foot up or not in that position, because it takes away all the compensations when you put the hands on the wall and, the fingertips, and you straighten out the elbows. She
Yeah.
can't do those little things that, little twist or a little bump or a little this or
Correct.
a little movement to like, be able to lift the other foot up.
Hmm. Hmm.
um
So in basic one-legged standing on her own, no support, was obviously harder. Then when
yeah.
she went to the wall, she was like, oh, and because her thorax was going way right. That was,
Oh, I
and
can
I was like,
only imagine. Yeah, because
right.
that's the only way she could get over there.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I mean, so she was very intrigued by, oh, no one's looked at this before, type of thing. And I was like, well, okay. So, but what's interesting is I like the issues with, like, so with the proteus longus. So because she liked the melt, she liked the tactile feedback, and
Mhm,
so I found, I was kind of drilling in there in prone in the bottom of her foot and going around the peroneus brevis, and I said these are the muscles: peroneus longus, her tib ant was another one, posterior tib, flexor digital.
mhm,
All of those are just muscles that are gripping and holding your foot. Okay, that's just a given. I said, but you want to release the right muscles. You don't have to sit there and willy-nilly just, sit there and release every single muscle in your foot. You want to release the relevant ones, okay?
mhm,
And sometimes what I do is I'll take the let's say it's the talocrural joint, for example. So I'll sit there and I'll just put it in, in it like a neutral dorsiflexion, and I'll just distract the talus a bit, and I'll feel what muscles are turning on, what are not turning on, what are, those types of things. And with her, it wasn't just like the entire gastroc. It was one small little fascicle. And I said, that's all you need to do. You don't need to foam roll your entire calf. You certainly can, but I want you to work on this specific. And I was like strumming like a guitar string. And that's the novel input. I said, take a miso soup spoon, and just strum it. Take your fingers, and I did the same thing at the bottom of the foot. I put a dumbbell on the bottom of her foot. I said, I want you to bias it more towards the outside of the foot, or do a teeny ball. And it's just input to the system, but don't waste your time going up and down the calf or going up and down the bottom of the foot. It has to be specific areas. And that's why I wanted to talk about her, because it was very specific parts of her foot. Yes, she was very stiff, but I do agree with you on the eversion, because it is interesting with the tendons, because I was racking my brain trying to figure out why would that bother her, because even if she's on a stiff foot, she's just doing a little bit of eversion with the therapy.
Right.
It wouldn't make her feel bad, right? So, and she's got no other major injuries, and she's really holistic, and she does supposedly everything. People say they do everything and they don't, but she was pretty all inclusive with the right supplements. So anyway, so what I did, I ended up going back to the squat. I had her squat, and I just gave her some input into the thorax. I distracted her thorax, centered her. Okay, I centered her thorax, and what does she do? She still goes to the right. She still goes to the right. So I was like, there's something in the foot. There's something neurological, not neuro, like in a bad way, but there's just some neuro.
The foot is off. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I said, okay, Eric, I got her back on the table. And I'm happy to talk about this offline with anybody, but I just did a lot of just some soft tissue, some re-education. I gave her self-release to do, in the time that I had remaining in that first session, very specific, bottom of the foot and to that fascicles of the gastroc. For her home program, I gave her the wall squats, okay, with the hands against the wall. I also had her, I'm just reading an email I sent her, I also gave her squats on a half foam roller. I said, just, go on a half foam roller, and you can free squat or put your hands on the wall and just go down into a squat. And she could obviously squat much lower because the dorsiflexion isn't, and so she wanted to be able to do that. She's like, oh, I can go all the way down. Like, you can do that. If you want to hold on to the wall, you can. I probably would, because you're on a half foam roller. But I said, when you're off the roller and you put your hands on the wall, I want you just to do some easy. I told her to put like a piece of tape on the wall or something to give as a reference for center. And I said, your hands will give you a reference for center, but just squat down. And if you find yourself going to the right, back off and just go down into that center free, or that center, what's the word, without going to the right. So it may have been like halfway down. So that was her 2. Then I gave her the Recognize app, and I gave her, I said, you need to get a mirror. We did some mirrors like later on. I said, just get a mirror. We'll talk about it next visit. But just get the mirror. And I did not have a mirror box with me at the time I saw her. So I saw her. So when I saw her, that's all I gave her the first visit. And so she came back to see me. I've only seen her twice. She was much better. She had the recognized love. She was scoring high. So I said, you need to sort of go through the context of go through those levels. And then she got in a mirror box. And I was like, perfect. And so I had brought mine in. I was like, let's just try this, because you don't have like chronic pain. Let's just see if you can get a little bit more movement. So we did, as a heel raises, you can do, we were just draw the alphabet, go back and forth, do whatever. And we were making things up as we went along. So she did that. So she went home with the movement progressions were the same, wall squats, and then squats on a half foam roller, and then the recognize and the mirror box. And then the self-release. So the second session, I just did, once again, a lot of that some self-release. I watched her walk. And then I got my hands on her, like I was behind her. And I just, I was trying to equalize the step length. I mean, I was like a metronome, 1, 2. That's what we did. We worked on gait 1, 2. I had her walk backwards. I had her walk side to side, both ways. And then but right and left. And then we finished up with some mirror box. So those are the 2 sessions so far. But I didn't introduce any theraband or any strengthening, because I don't think this woman's going to be weak. She's a little weak, but I don't think that strengthening is important at this point in the first 2 sessions. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, she already didn't like it, so why would you do it
Why would
again?
you do it?
I mean, I
Exactly.
guess you could go to a much lighter theraband and have her go through the motions, but you were having her do those with the mirror box. She was
Yeah.
doing what she needed to do was just activate. And I love the idea, especially with when they don't have persistent pain, because you don't need to go through the steps, which is, laterality to graded motor imagery, then to the mirror box. But without persistent pain, we don't just, if it helped her begin to fire up her her prefrontal cortex, that's going to change her movement system. Plus, you had her doing some really good mindful exercises. Pay attention to where you are on your feet as you squat down. If you feel yourself drifting to the right, then come back. Things that she can change. It's not fancy, but it's functional movement. She wanted to do it. She loved the fact that she could go lower with the foam roller. So now her knees and hips are getting some activity that they weren't getting before.
Right. Right.
And her back is getting activity, and so is her shoulder joints. All of
Mhm.
that, I think, adds into to the movement system complex. And then, the things that she was doing, she just needed to interact with her foot again. David Butler calls it, I mean, the story he tells about somebody who was booted for a long time is that, the the partner to this person said, you just got her to fall in love with her leg again.
Right.
Basically that's what he did. But, that's what you were doing, is like, go here, do this, rub here, roll here, and so it gave her some things to do that strummed her central nervous system, because she likes the melt method,
Mhm.
but now you gave her some really specific things to do. But
Yeah.
you didn't just give her soft tissue mobilization stuff to do, you gave her real movement things to do too. And the more she
Yeah.
starts to shift her weight, guess what, the more the bottom of her feet and everything around it is going to have to start firing up, and she's going to have to start fanning her foot out and lifting and folding it back up and moving it and moving the toes. And all of that's going to happen because as she begins to change her weight on her feet, she's going to be responding differently. So
Yeah.
I
And
think
I,
that's
you know, I
great.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting because of her age,
Mm-hmm.
because uh, of the HRT, and just,
Mm-hmm.
very, and the fact that there's very significant things that raised my radar was the fact that,
Yeah.
why is she a theraband? She's on hormone replacement, as you said, not doesn't affect the tendons but the muscles, the lack of estrogen, and her age, and the fact that she was booted, and the fact that she's on her right leg. And I was like, well, wait a
Yeah.
minute, if you're on your right leg, that was the issue for me. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
typically they're off, but once again, why? I have the luxury of knowing she was worse with the therapist. I wouldn't have given her a therapist anyway. That's not my style. But why she's on her right leg? Why? Why is that? And who? My guess is because of all the input to that right leg for the past 3 months. But the fact that it caused an overload into that lower extremity, and the first choice was to overload it again with the theraband.
Mm-hmm.
That's why she got worse. So the
Yeah.
point is that people who are not assessing, don't assume they're off, or they're off their involved side if they have an issue. Don't assume
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Look.
the big thing.
Well,
Just
and the other thing is that you went after to make sure that the thorax wasn't a big driver, and centering the thorax didn't change anything.
it made it worse.
The thorax is going with the leg, not driving the leg.
Yeah,
But the interesting thing is, what would be nice to know is, what did she look like before this injury?
I know.
Because she's on that right side, and was that part of why
Yes.
she
Yeah.
got injured? What was she doing, and how much had she been, was she over on the other side, and to the point to where something happened, and she just had an unfortunate fibular fracture. So
Yeah, and she's a rower, so feet in, clipped, or velcroed,
right,
right?
she's going to
You've
pull
got
the other way, which is why her thorax was off, probably.
Right, exactly. So I'm just looking at her. No, I mean, she had no real. We talk a lot about the past medical and past movement history. No real issues, but the point is that please just check the center of mass. I know it's and literally just assess. It's basically assessing their willingness to move. That's really all it is. Right, left, and if she's on her right, if she's on the right side, maybe use a little clinical reasoning. Why? Why is she on that right side? is it an overload? It clearly was an overload. And so releasing, doing all that release work, self-release, and me sort of doing it in the clinic, and really helped. And so am I going to give her the TheraBand exercise? No way, no how, because I'm a business owner, and God help, I'm not going to give her that she's going to walk away, right? So, and I don't think she needs that. I mean, I have some Pilates, and we can do some things on the reformer, but this is, and just getting her centered. That's the thing. We don't need to fire the peroneals up; they're already fired up. So, it's don't assume that that you have to do band exercises, do everything because it's part of like post protocol for a boot or a fib fracture. That's not always the case. So that's why I wanted to talk about her. And plus the hormonal stuff I thought was interesting. So we'll keep everybody posted. And if anybody has any questions about any, so I know we talked about our podcast membership, Susan, in the intro. If anybody has any questions about anything, we're gonna, as part of our podcast membership, we're going to do a Q&A. So we're going to, as you're listening to the podcast, if you have any questions or want any follow-ups, submit those to us and, our emails, and we'll put those in the Q&A for our podcast membership. Okie dokie. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.